This is Mark Strassman, reporter with Etopia Media's Entertainment Technology World. We're about to speak to two representatives of TechSmith. The first is Tony Dunckel, who can raise his hand over there. He's the product manager for SnagItÂ. And we're also going to talk to Troy Stein, who's the Camtasia product manager. They're both in Okemos, Michigan. I'm in Los Angeles. Welcome, both of you, to Etopia Media's Entertainment Technology World.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having us, Mark.
Now, we're using your very software, the Camtasia Studio, to record this interview. So why don't we start with Troy, who's the product manager for Camtasia Studio, to just get right into the midst of it here and tell us a little bit about what this product is and what it's good for. And if you could maybe either lower the camera or raise yourself up, you'll be framed better.
What, are you saying I'm short?
I'm saying you. Well, I'm saying you appear short, but I'm sure you.
I am short.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Very short.
Now it's better. Now you're filling the frame more appropriately. Okay.
Very good. So Camtasia Studio is a screen recording software. It allows people to create training, demos, tutorials, or record their PowerPoint presentations. It does full motion recording. That's what you're using now. So anything that happens on your screen can be recorded in full motion so that others can view it in a variety of formats. We support Windows Media, QuickTime, Flash, Real Media, AVI formats for the people who want to edit it in their multimedia production. There's lots of options there.
Okay.
It's used by all kinds of folks.
Okay. Tony, tell us about SnagItÂ and how it relates, if it does, to Camtasia.
Well, sure. Troy and I often use kind of similar analogies. One that we say that Camtasia is like a VCR for your computer screen. SnagItÂ's more like a digital camera for your PC. So when you need to have static screenshots from anything on your screen, whether it be, the full desktop, just a window, down to a region, or even just an icon or a button on the screen, SnagItã provides the ability to pull that content off the screen, place that into kind of an inline editor, allows you to add annotations and mark little edits up with SnagItã's comprehensive editing features. And then the biggest part, most important part, of course, is being able to share that. So being able to send that through email or instant messenger, for example, put it to the clipboard, put it to a file. Pretty much any of the formats people need these days.
Okay, so which kind of users would prefer or be most appropriate customers for SnagItã and which for Camtasia, or can a lot of people use both? What's the story that way?
Actually, quite amazing that we do actually provide people with both products quite often. What we found is that people that sort of start with SnagItã to do static screen captures begin to find that they want something more. And so where SnagItã still provides and will continue to provide a great base for doing things like sharing content in an email, adding visual aids to a presentation, helping educators, for example, make screenshots for classroom handouts and those types of things. That'll always be there, but if they evolve into more complex kind of training and want to have the ability to show things that aren't able to be done in just a screenshot, they want that animated ability that Camtasia Studio provides.
Okay, before we talk in more technical detail about the products, let's talk a little bit about the company. What were the origins of TechSmith, and how did you end up in Okemos, Michigan, and not Silicon Valley or some other such hotbed of technological development?
Well, Okemos, surprisingly, is, just like you said, not the hotbed of technological innovation.
Tony, of course.
Right, yeah. It was actually a funny story. We actually started back in 1988 as a technology consulting company, and as a part of that, we had our own needs for documentation. So SnagItã, before it was ever even named, was an internal tool just for doing documentation for our own projects. About the time that Microsoft launched the first Windows platform, SnagItã was released to market in 1991. And since then, it's kind of snowballed, and we've come out with a whole series of products, have millions of customers worldwide.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about, is the company privately held, publicly traded? What's that story?
Yes. We're a privately held company. We have a little less than 100 employees right now. Do business, like I said, all over the world. We've got products localized in different languages, German and French right now. And that's about it.
Okay. Troy, tell us what you can and want to about the technology itself, and how the magic of being able to record the screen that we're doing right now works?
Well, it's a very secret sauce.
I understand.
What I can say is that since we've been doing screen capture since, God, 21, was it 10 years ago? How long?
Yeah,
13 years ago. Okay, so 15 years ago. We know really well what's going on in the operating system.
Right.
And what's being presented on your screen. And so we have a highly optimized way for capturing pictures, or in Camtasia Studio's way of thinking, 20 pictures a second, so that we can make a very fluid screen recording. And so it's what we are known for in the industry is the compression, which allows us to both record these lossless or high fidelity pictures without losing any quality while retaining a small file size.
Okay, so in fact, we're using site speed for this conference, and the site speed's being operated by the Windows XP operating system, and somewhere in the chain of command, somewhere in the structure there, your product is siphoning off a copy of the feed that's coming to the screen as well. It's not really copying the screen, it's copying the feed that's going to the screen, the video card. Before it gets to the video card, it's going into your program and being captured there. Is that basically what's happening?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And does that work with SnagItã also? How does SnagItã do the comparable capture there for its objects?
Yeah, really the same technology. What Troy said in the fact that we kind of have this intimate knowledge of what the operating system's doing, and our ability then to interact with that in a way that captures not only the visual stuff you see on the screen, but as we're evolving as a company, the stuff that you don't see. Some of those system events that are happening behind the scenes, mouse clicks, keyboard entries, that kind of thing.
Okay, let's talk about your products from the user's point of view. Who are the typical and who are sort of the leading edge users of SnagItã? What are they using it for? Who's using it for what?
Well, we've got SnagItã. It's interesting. We've often said that screen capture is the missing element of the Windows operating system,
right.
And because of that,
be careful if you say that. They may want to they want to put it in.
As always. But because of that, of course, we've got just a wide range of users that pretty much span every business, industry, consumer market, hobbyist that's out there. What we found, of course, though, is the core users that are using this are doing it for purposes of documentation, training, creating nice presentations, doing how-tos, maybe in a help desk type format. So it's lots of sharing visual content on the screen. Those are the typical users. The fun part of our job, of course, is that we get those odd stories that come through. Someone's created some new innovation of how they're using the product.
We had one the other day.
Sure, we had one the other day. A gentleman came through and said that on his new video blogging site that he's using, actually SnagItã to help create teleprompter screens by taking screen captures and being able to reverse those through the editor. They use the flip command, and it turns them backwards so that it displays on the screen. It comes through as readable text form.
Okay.
So just a unique way in which people are using our products for that purpose.
Let me ask you both about a more nefarious use here. It would seem there was a lot of controversy years ago, and I suppose it's died down now, about employers monitoring their employees' activities at the computer. Your product could be used to record every keystroke and every screen that any employee uses, couldn't it? And then the boss or some machine, and we'll talk about that, would look over it and see what they've all been up to all day, wouldn't they?
You could use it just like you could use a cassette recorder to put somewhere in a room and record every conversation in a room. But realistically, there's other tools that are designed specifically for doing just that.
Okay.
And so we don't see very much application of Camtasia or SnagItã in that arena.
Okay. Let's talk about Camtasia and who's using it now. Is it how long has the product been out, and who have been the early adopters, and what are they using it for?
It's been out about 6 years now. Early adopters were multimedia IT people, the people who were familiar with a software application and needed some way to show other people how to use it. or they were often technical trainers that needed to give tutorials or demonstrations. Those are the folks that are using it, have been using it for the most part. However, in the last probably 9 months or so, it's been a lot of PowerPoint users who are recording their PowerPoint presentations and making them available online.
Okay, so there's a lot of educational, generally construed applications for the Camtasia product.
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of, it's what we just call knowledge transfers. You know, I know something about an application on my screen, or maybe my knowledge is embodied in a PowerPoint presentation. Wherever that application is, Camtasia allows you to record it and then share it with somebody else.
Okay. Why doesn't Tony just walk us through very briefly the process that someone's going to use SnagItã?
Well, as I said, you know, SnagItã we also think of as a utility. So one of the ways that we've approached the product in terms of how people use it is really embedding it inside the everyday tasks that you're already doing on your PC. So what we've done with SnagItã, outside of just having it as a standard application, is we've put it inside the toolbars of places like Microsoft Office products, Word, PowerPoint, Excel. We've also placed it inside the Internet Explorer browser, the Firefox browser, all the places that people spend time doing stuff in their day-to-day activities, including Microsoft Outlook. So when you need to bring screen captures, I'm sorry?
Do you do that? Do the application makers do it? How do people get it into the toolbar of their various applications?
Sure. Well, when they go ahead and install SnagItã, one of the options in the install process is asking, do you want to embed SnagItã as a toolbar inside X application?
Okay.
So makes it very customizable by the user which applications it's embedded in.
Okay, so when it's in there, then presumably it becomes even easier to use than it would have been before.
Absolutely. It's as simple as clicking a button, capturing the content that you want from the screen, and it automatically embeds that content back inside your PowerPoint, your Word doc, your email, wherever your source application is.
Okay. Troy, tell us about a typical session that people would use Camtasia for, and how they go about setting it up and using the product.
Sure. Microsoft's a good enough example. They rolled out Office 2003 training / tutorial / demos. They really kind of went and covered a broad range with the little videos that they made. They would open up Excel, and they would have a spreadsheet there. They'd record the spreadsheet and say, well, if you want to create a trend in Excel, well, here's how you do it. And they just show how to use the function in the software.
So
they'd stop it.
No, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
So they'd stop the recording. Then they'd either edit the narration, which was done live, or they'd re-record the narration or just do it after the fact, whatever they're comfortable with. They can add call-outs, maybe add some interactivity to the video, and then they publish it. And they can publish it. Microsoft obviously shares it in Windows Media format. A lot of people share it in Flash, or some people put it in AVI for CD-ROM or other multimedia projects.
So essentially, in terms of its functionality, it's as though I would bring a one-on-one session. I would create a one-on-one session, bring someone over to my computer, and show them how to do something, and then they could take away the video of doing that, and they could play it over and over again until they got it. And
absolutely,
and I wouldn't have to do that.
In fact, we have one customer who he's fairly technically expert in a lot of things, but sometimes he has people come in from out of state to show him how to do stuff, and before he lets them show him, he turns on Camtasia Studio, hooks up the microphone, and says, "Okay, now show me."
Right.
And they basically go through and show everything. Camtasia doesn't require you to have that shoulder-to-shoulder experience physically in order to view that same type of experience on your PC.
So essentially, this enables the creation of a library, a database of the best people explaining the most complicated or simple things, who are the people who are the best at it, and then making that available to everyone to learn it. It seems like a great way of speeding up the learning curve for everybody on everything.
Yeah, we have not only the ability to organize a number of videos into a table of contents or an index for people, but we also make it simple enough to record and produce, or at least we hope so, and it seems to be popular enough that the administrative assistants in the accounting department can show you how to record your timesheet in Excel. Those kinds of things are fairly simple for people to do.
So it works both for the maker of a big new application that wants to teach everyone how to use it, or a specific procedure that's specific to a company. It could be personalized that way, that, as you said, the accounting clerk can do administrative assistant can do something and everyone can see it.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about beyond the screen capture, the editing. What are the capacities? First, why don't you say a little bit about SnagItÂ and then say something about Camtasia, how the post-production process works for these two products.
Sure. I'll go ahead and start with SnagItÂ. Throughout the years, SnagItÂ's actually evolved its editing piece to be almost as important and powerful as the capture devices itself. When folks are done doing their capture, it automatically, if the user wants to, places it inside this kind of inline editor. And what that allows them to do is easily do the things that more advanced applications require multiple steps. So an example of that is to put a fancy bubble call-out on top of their screenshot, type some text, put it in a nice font and color that you want, and be able to save that off.
You've both
other things.
Yeah, you both mentioned call-outs. What are call-outs?
Call-outs are the text bubbles you see in things like cartoons, for example, that make you think that the user's saying something verbally from the screenshot itself.
Okay, so you could say, here's where we really made all the if it was, I don't want to attack some companies that have ripped people off, but here's where we really made all that money from everyone in California that we were cheating and so on. You could put a little bubble there to say that, right?
You could say that. We often use things for click this button, but that works as well.
Okay. All right. So
sure.
So go on with the editing there.
Sure. There's a series of other things that you can do, both from an image management perspective, things about file size, color, all the tools that you'd expect in an average editor or a typical editor. But then also on top of that are all of the what we call effects. So I want to add a torn edge to the edge of the image, give it a more professional appeal. SnagItã provides the ability to do kind of a one-click motion, as opposed to having to know things about layering and all the advanced image editing applications do. SnagItã's kind of a one-click and apply.
Okay, so what's a typical complicated end product that you could create? What would be some of the aspects of a really good presentation that you could put together using SnagItã?
Well, one that I often like to use, again, like I was mentioning the effects, one of the things I think is difficult to do just with a regular screen capture, of course, is giving it that embedded look. So being able to take a screen capture of any content, applying a faded edge to the top, bottom, right, and left of the image, and then pasting it inside of a PowerPoint, for example, makes it look like it's almost embedded seamlessly inside this PowerPoint slide. I think that's something that's difficult to do with almost any tool until you get, to some of the advanced applications like Photoshop.
So in fact, you've created a new tool here for graphic expression that people are presumably on a learning curve for and learning how to use and say things in more effective ways than they could otherwise.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's talk about Camtasia and the post-screen capture process. What are the capacities, the capabilities of Camtasia once you've got the video and the audio?
There's really three parts. There's one is the video editing, second is the audio editing, and the third is the graphics or interactivity. On the video editing, it's pretty simple. You select a part of the video that you want to cut out. Maybe it's the first 5 seconds that you just didn't do correctly. So easy enough to use the scissor tools and cut it out. From the audio editing perspective, you can go back in and select a part of the audio that you want and re-record that, as well as replace that or add additional audio. Maybe you want to have some background music to it.
Okay, let's take advantage of what we're doing here. You're using some hand gestures to express how that editing's done. It's very visually intuitive, isn't it?
Well, I think so. It's actually, it almost follows a Microsoft Word approach where you click in a timeline and you drag it and then you stop, and as soon as that's highlighted, then you click on the scissor tool and away it goes. So it's so simple. Even Tony can do it.
Right. So it essentially creates digital segments that are manipulable in the same way that a word is manipulable in Word.
To a degree, yes. You can cut as simply as you can in Word. That is correct.
Okay. So again, talk about the process then. Those are the aspects of it. What's a typical scenario in which someone shoots something, records it, and then puts it together into the final form?
Yeah, so the recording process is simple enough, straightforward. You record it, you're done, you see it, you say, well, I got to edit it. So what I would, more often than not, usually the first few seconds I was just sort of getting myself oriented. I'll go ahead and select that part of the timeline, and then I'll cut that out, and I'll look at the audio narration, and I say, yeah, well, you know what, I ummed or erred or awed or hiccuped at that point, or someone called on the phone, that's fine. Let's just re-record that part of the audio. And then maybe there's just one or two things on the screen that were important. I'll put an arrow that says, from the file menu, choose new, or I might even want to go so far as to require interactivity. That is, I actually want them to click on the file menu. So the video will stop for a moment when I produce it in an interactive format. It will stop, they'll go up and they'll click on the file menu, and then the video will continue. So I can actually step people through a process so that they can become familiar with it without actually having to do a trial run in the software itself. They can just watch a Camtasia video online and interact with the movie that way.
Okay, compare the two modes that the Camtasia editor has, the storyboard and the timeline. Which is appropriate for what, and how do they work, and is it easy to toggle back and forth between them?
Yeah, there's two modes in Camtasia Studio to viewing the content. One is the timeline, the other is the storyboard. Timeline is a line, right? And the storyboard are little chunks of video that sort of look like PowerPoint slides. Most people use the timeline most often. However, the storyboard is helpful for people when they want to see clips. Maybe they've dragged 10 little video clips down onto the timeline and they want to be able to move them around or rearrange them. You can do that fairly easily in storyboard mode.
Okay. Before we move on to some products that aren't SnagItÂ or Camtasia, why don't each of you sort of sum up what the product's good for and why people would want to have it, starting with SnagItÂ.
Sure. I think, as I said a little bit earlier, SnagItÂ's kind of that missing piece that everyone can use, and we find that from the diversity of our customers out there. For any tool that you want to share, all the digital content that's becoming increasingly important and in abundance on the internet, on your day-to-day activities, SnagItÂ's a perfect tool for sharing that content with colleagues, with friends, for training, for presentations, and the like.
Okay. And how about Camtasia?
Camtasia is appropriate for people who need to share some expertise of a computer nature with somebody else. So whether that's doing technical training or a software demo or a web demo, or they're doing a PowerPoint presentation, all those can be recorded with Camtasia Studio, published in any format that your audience would ever want, and it looks great. It looks like you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with the person in the room.
Okay, let me again sort of raise the dark side here so you can address it. It sounds like you could, in an era when people can download streaming video from a variety of sources and resolution gets better and more products are available, is there the possibility that the Camtasia in particular can be used to record and distribute in peer-to-peer networks, the kind of copyrighted material that the Supreme Court is hearing a discussion about right now, I think?
Let me take a different spin on that. You can record anything on your screen with Camtasia Studio, given the right amount of bandwidth and horsepower. In my first week at TechSmith, I got a request from the FBI that said, "Can we get a copy of Camtasia?" And my thought was, "Well, I pay taxes. You should pay for my software."
Right.
And but they said, "No, we need it for someone who's 16." I thought, "Well, what the heck is that all about?" So we queried them. And they explained that there was a young woman out in Arizona that was out in a chat room, and she was being approached by a gentleman that was overage, and eliciting her to meet him at a location. And it ends up that they gave her Camtasia Studio. She recorded all the interactivity. The guy goes behind bars. So there's a dark side to the internet, which we all know about. The good thing is that Camtasia Studio can be used for good and is used a lot by the intelligence gathering community to do just that and to make sure that it's actually a safer place for it.
So the dark side is a two-edged sword itself.
Yeah, well, we just shine the sharper side of it.
Right. Okay. Does SnagItã get used more often too in such situations?
It does, pending some recent legislation. But yes, in fact, the things like in chat rooms, SnagItÂ scrolling capture, the ability to capture the content of a scrolling window from top to bottom as a single image, it's used in capturing those chat room sessions that typically grow well beyond what the screen can display. So law enforcement agencies are using that in that regard as well.
So people should be well advised that anything they say, do, type, or present over the internet is capturable, recordable, distributable, and presumably acceptable as evidence in a court of law.
Well, of course, the applications have to be present on one of the party screens. So typically these things are always known. In the instances of law enforcement, that's of course under a different circumstance.
Right.
But as we all know, the internet's a public domain, so information out there is under copyright law. And TechSmith's policy, of course, is that the risk or the liability does not lie in the process of capturing, but the redistribution of that content, and it really becomes upon the owner's intent with that content that they captured and how they use that.
So in fact, it has the same functional equivalency of Xerox machine, and those warnings that were on the Xerox machines at Kinko's that said, don't break these federal laws,
exactly.
is essentially the same thing now. It's a more powerful tool. All right, let's move on to a product that I imagine neither of you is the product manager for, and I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's MORAE. Someone tell me how to pronounce that?
Yeah, it's Moray.
Okay. And what does it do?
The Camtasia team got some initial requests for adding features to Camtasia for usability purposes. That is, people wanted help in making better software and more usable websites. And we kind of reconstructed everything from scratch, created this technology called rich recording technology that not only made a movie of the screen, but also intelligently recorded all the mouse clicks and everything that was going on the screen, so that somebody after the fact could watch this and say, oh my gosh, they don't get it. They don't know how to go from the file menu, choose new. It took them 2 minutes and 40 seconds to actually open a document when we thought it would take them 22 seconds. And so you're able, from a usability perspective, to show these highlight reels back to the developers so that they can see for real that there are some usability issues.
So it essentially brings into the developer's purview a lot of collected customer tests, so they can use that to improve the usability of their product.
It's not only the screen video that they bring back, but also the camera video. So you got somebody who's sort of looking at the screen going, what? I don't get it,
right.
you know? And it's what we call good medicine. You know, the developers watch this thing, and I've seen it too, because we did usability studies on Camtasia, and I arrogantly think that the first person is just not really all that smart. And then the second person, well, they're not all that smart either. And by the third or fourth person, I'm the one that's an absolute idiot for ever thinking that, you know, this UI would ever make sense to anyone. And it really helps inform the decision-making process from a development perspective.
Talking about the dark side yet again, could politicians use this to test their speeches?
Heaven forbid.
Okay. Anything you want to say about Moray?
It's phenomenal stuff. I was out at a trade show I was in New Orleans,
right,
and I was connected to our network. And there was somebody back in this room where I am right now doing a usability study on Camtasia StudioÂ. And from New Orleans, I could watch that person's face, I could watch their screen, I could see everything that they were doing, and I could make notes electronically that said, you know what, we really do need to change this UI. Here's a sticky point. And it makes much better software products because of the application.
Okay, what's in Sharpen?
It's a compression tool, a codec, if you will. Codec stands for compression decompression.
Right.
And it allows you to work on a Macintosh to get the same quality recordings that you can on a PC with Camtasia.
Okay. Why don't you both talk a little bit, as much as you want to, about product extensions or new functionality or even new products that are coming out of the TechSmith labs in the months and years to come.
Again, that requires the secret handshake, of course, to know all that knowledge.
Right.
TechSmith's never been one to pre-announce stuff. What I can say, of course, is that This space, the screen capture space, of course, becomes more and more important to us and to our customers as kind of that proliferation of online technology as a whole, but especially online technology, because what that's doing is putting more and more content in the front of people's faces day in and day out. So our ability to grow upon that, especially as we see things like the new platform from Microsoft coming out, of course lends us to kind of defining our next steps with what our screen capture applications do today. So all I can say at this point, of course, is that we're far from being done with these products.
Okay. What about porting this to cell phones?
Interesting concept. We actually have been asked before, how much can we do with what we call replication, which is cell phones, PDAs, Microsoft mobile Windows platform. Being asked, can we do testing on that as well, especially for manufacturers trying to develop those platforms. Through emulation and technologies like that, we are able to do some of that. Never been a core area of ours. Part of the reason there, of course, is that we're tooled from a developer standpoint as a Microsoft Windows development company. So expanding into some of those areas requires some mind shift and some resource changing here at TechSmith.
Right, because to the extent that people are doing video conversations on their cell phones, they may want to record them as well.
That's correct.
Got a whole new market segment there for you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, why don't you sort of wrap up? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Mark, I've seen some of Tony's plans, and I'm really geeked about what he's planning with this product. I think it's going to be great.
Okay.
We've been too kind, it's vice versa.
All right. Why don't you sort of wrap up and tell people who want to get more information and, who knows, buy these products, the different ways they can contact TechSmith so they can do that.
Sorry, Troy.
Okay. TechSmith.com, TechSmith.com is the best way to get a hold of the products. You can get trial versions of the software applications. They're good for 30 days. We don't limit them in any way. There's no watermarking. Go ahead and use it. Tell others about it. From a purchasing perspective, there's a purchase option on the website, or you can call us direct at 800-517-3001. And Tony's home phone number.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to wrap up this way. Sort of a big thing close here. What do each of you think that the SnagItÂ and the Camtasia product are contributing overall to the functionality of the digital world and what people can do for themselves and for the people they deal with using these tools?
I'll go first if I can, Tony. I think most online content stinks. To be real crude about it, there's a lot of stuff out there, especially you look in like the educational realm where you get some course online and it's nothing but a Word document.
Right.
That's not a course. And unfortunately the corporate world isn't too far ahead in that regard. So what Camtasia does is it makes a full motion recording that actually looks like, a real person is given a real presentation, and it's really navigable. You got the navigation to it. So I think we're actually changing the landscape for education and for training material online.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I'd add a little bit to the Camtasia before I talk about SnagItÂ, and the fact that the technology that we're using to record this exact interview is really part of where I see this heading. Again, this happening in a live video format on the internet. Now you're able to take this and share this across, millions of viewers, I'm sure. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
I'm watching.
So of course, our ability to interact with that again only helps the digital media format or digital media world from that perspective. I think SnagItÂ is again a complement to a lot of the different tools that you use, including Camtasia Studio. But again, all the different applications that people are using on a day-to-day, whether that be from something as simple as email to something as powerful as making a nice presentation in PowerPoint. That ability for sharing information digitally is key, and SnagItÂ's there as a visual representation of that.
Okay. I want to thank you both very much for appearing on Etopia Media's Entertainment Technology World today, and hopefully we'll be able to check back and have even more informative, educational, and entertaining interactions for the viewing pleasure of millions of Internet users in the future. Thanks very much.
Great. Mark, thank you
very much, Mark.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.